Am I disabled?
Bruh.
Probably. Hey guys, it's Crimsgray VR, and today I'll be ranking World War II tanks. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so the first one we have is the Panzer II. Now this one's pretty cool. I like it in terms of War Thunder. I just like having an autocannon, a light tank, and especially at least in War Thunder at the lower tiers, it's pretty easy to pin anything because you just can like spray it down. It's pretty satisfying. Solid tank in real life because it was mobile. It definitely wasn't meant to tank other tank hits because in terms of where I'd rank this, I think I would rank it a solid. I would rank it a solid D tier, D or C. I'd say maybe. I'm gonna say C. It is a decent tank. It's obviously not meant to take on other tanks very well, but it works. It works, you know. So it's going to C. Next tank we have is a Panzer III. Now I like these ones as well. They're pretty mobile. They're more on the medium tank side, and they can take a few hits, unlike the Panzer II. In regards to like historical stuff, I don't really know much about them. Yeah, with the Panzer III, I think it was better. Definitely better than the Panzer II because it has a main gun that can actually take on tanks and pretty much the backbone of the German army at the time. Other than that, I would rate it a solid. I would say it's a B. Decent armor, good gun, I guess, for the time. Obviously, later in the war, it wouldn't be as useful in terms of firepower. Next, we have the Panthers, the Panther line. I'm a sucker for the Panthers, not gonna lie, because they have a really good gun. Plus, they have good mobility, and they can take hits, just like the Tiger. But I know in real life they had some issues in terms of mechanical stuff, but that was just mainly because of the factories and stuff being hit by air raids and stuff by the Allies. So, and I also think if the Germans were to have focused more on the Panthers and improved them to where they didn't have those problems anymore, they could have been significantly better than if they had gone what they did with the heavy tanks like the Tiger 2, Tiger, and that sort of line, which, yeah, those had problems in themselves. I'm not gonna lie. I would rate it a solid B, in my opinion. It's a very good tank. It was meant to take on the not the American T-34s. Those things did not exist yet. They were meant to take on the Soviet T-34s. That was the main reason why they're being built. Next, we have the Panzer IV, which I like these ones as well. They're a solid tank. There was I would argue the most used tank. I don't think there's really an argument to make there. To be honest, it was the most used tank in World War II, at least on the German side, obviously. And yeah, and War Thunder is pretty fun. I like the tank. Sometimes I feel like the armor is better in real life than it was in the game, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm one of those War Thunder players, you know. So I would say in terms for the Panzer IV, in terms of ranking it on this, I would give it a solid A. This is the Tiger 1, and this is one of my favorite World War II tanks, mainly because of all the stories that I've heard about all the German aces that used them, and how successful they were, specifically the Tiger 1. I know the later ones had some issues, but at the end of the day, the so-called Tiger E, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Tiger E is basically a Tiger 1, but with added armor and machine gun on the turret, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Correct me, but that's my thought process on it. And I would rate it. I would say it's one of the best tanks out of all the tanks in World War II. So have it a solid A. Actually, now that I think of it, I feel like it's more of a S tier vehicle because in real life, there was so many good stories about the commanders that used them and used them successfully as compared to the later Tiger 2s, King Tigers, and those sort of vehicles. So I'm actually going to switch it to S tier. If you disagree,
Hold up.
you're wrong. That's all I'm going to say. German engineering, am I right? Next up, we have the Stugs. The Stug line, shall we say. I would say the Stugs were really good in terms of historically wise, because they, out of all the other vehicles that they had, the vehicles with the most kills was the Stugs, and like I'm not sure if the Hetzer is in the line. I mean, obviously they're both they're tank destroyers, so they have the same purpose, but the Stug was very successful from what I've heard, and the Red, they have some of the same stories in a way, similar to the Tigers, the Tiger Commanders, and that sort of thing, because they have, I believe they ranked the most kills out of all the tanks of World War II, at least on the German side. But I would rate it a solid. I would rate them a solid A tier, because they're really good, but they're not. I feel like they weren't as good as like the Tiger 1. So we have a Hetzer this time. So the Hetzer, I like the Hetzer. It's a really good vehicle. I don't really know much about Hetzers and like how they performed in the war in real life, but I know in War Thunder they're really good because of the angles that they have. If you are to face one frontally, you're not going to be able to pin it. But it's decent, it seems. I'm not really a big simp for it, shall we say. I would give it a C. This is a Italian tank. So this is the M14, I believe. At least that's what I had in my notes. Anyways, don't worry about it. M14 Italian tank. Italians never were known for good tanks. Not gonna lie. Most of their tanks probably can't be classified as tanks, because a lot of them had just machine guns and like tankettes. I mean, technically they kind of were tanks because they had tracks still, but putting a machine gun on a armored vehicle does not make it a tank. Let's be honest. But yeah, the Italian tanks sucked. That's all I'm gonna say. Plus, their commanders kind of sucked. Anyways, War Thunder, in regards to War Thunder, I haven't really played the Italian tanks much, but I know this tank of theirs seemed to actually be pretty good. I'm not sure how exactly good it was in real life though. So, if you know anything about them, comment. Tell me what they were like, shall we say. But I would rate it. It's hard to rate this one because I know there's like Italy had at least one good tank out of the war, but like majority wise they're all just trash. I feel like that is kind of true to this day as well. Anyways, I would say it's a D. So this is a Japanese tank. So this is a Type 4 Chi, something like that. I don't really care much about the Japanese tanks. Just first of all, don't even I mean, this is a cool looking tank, not gonna lie, but Japan wasn't really known for making good tanks as well. I mean, they were okay, probably better than Italian tanks, but their design choice is so ugly. Like, where's the angles? Yeah, they have problems. This tank in particular, though, I would rate it a D. Or a C. I'm gonna rate it a D, actually, yeah. All the other vehicles, at least tanks, are solid F tier, for sure. There's the KV-1. I like this vehicle, but I hate it at the same time. Because, at least in terms of War Thunder, whenever I face it, it feels borderline impossible to kill. except for when it gets up tiered and you're in a better tank. Whenever I play vehicles like that, especially in the Russian tree, they tend to not be as good as I thought they were because probably because I just don't know how to play them. Let's be honest. I'm kind of terrible at War Thunder. I'll just put that out there. It's probably why I complain so much about like Russian bias and American bias and all that fun stuff. But anyways, I would rate the KV-1 a solid A because at least it motivated the Germans to put bigger guns in their panzers, their tanks. Another Soviet tank, we have a T-34, and these were really good vehicles in terms. I mean, one-on-one with a German tank, they are kind of trash. Not gonna lie. The only advantage they had was their ability to produce a butt ton of them and to like overwhelm the Germans. But other than that, I mean, they're the main reason why the Germans developed the Panthers to counter the T-34s, especially like the later variants, which were a whole lot more deadly and harder to deal with, shall we say. Other than that, I would rate them by themselves. They're not a good tank, but like they're kind of the reason why the Soviets won against the Germans. So I'm gonna rate it a solid A. Ooh, another Soviet tank. So we got a IS-1. These these are pretty cool. I like these ones. Whenever I seen these, at least in War Thunder, having that small gun in it feels wrong. At least to my brain, because whenever I think of like an IS tank, I think of it with the longer gun, the big longer gun. Is that is that how you're supposed to describe it? I would rate the IS-1 a solid. I mean, it kind of has the same build of the KV-1 in a way. I would say it's a solid B in terms of armor. Right here we have a Soviet IS-2. This is the one I was talking about earlier. It's just the IS-1 pretty much, with a upgraded gun and I believe upgraded armor of some sorts. I don't really know. This is a pretty good heavy tank. Like in War Thunder, seems really good. If you're in an IS-2 and you face the Tiger though, you're kind of boned in a way because I've noticed if you shoot at an IS-2, especially in the turret ring, it just pops. Historically, I know in real life in the war, the IS-2s weren't as successful as they probably were hoping because there may have been some tech issues with it. I know there might have been some tech issues with the Soviet tanks because of the quality of their steel, but I'm sure the Lend-Lease fixed that problem. I would rate the IS-2 a solid A. This next one's fun. This is a KV-2. This tank is hilarious. I love the derpy gun on it. I remember back when I played World of Tanks, I would love playing the KV-2 because you can just one-tap anything. Other than that, in like real life, they were only really used for bunker busters in a way because yeah, that's a big gun.
That's what she said.
And they're very slow, that's for sure. I have seen a video of one driving around at some museum, and it looks pretty cool. Definitely slow though, that's for sure. I would rate it a solid D, let's be honest. Mobility is the most important thing. Ooh, next we have the M4 Sherman. Let's go. I think these are really interesting tanks. I mean, like, they're not really special in terms of like coolness factor, I guess, but they were good in the fact that they were able to be repaired really easily, even if it was knocked out, and rebuild it, recrew it, and that sort of thing. That was a really interesting thing to learn about World War II. But War Thunder, they're pretty good. Whenever I faced them in my German tanks, they seem to be a little tough to kill at times, especially as a jumbo. I believe it might be a jumbo, but essentially, yeah, the Shermans were okay. They're kind of like the T-34 because they weren't exactly the most survivable tank, and most German tanks were able to like easily pin American vehicles. Let's be honest. We never really used heavy tanks in World War II until like the very end, and it was pretty much like not even worth putting them in because we won at that point. So I would rate it a solid. I would rate it an S tier because it was one of the vehicles that won the war, shall we say. Next, we have another American tank. This time, it's actually a heavy tank. I imagine weren't really used much in World War II at like the very tail end, but in terms of War Thunder and stuff, they are really good. I feel yeah, at least compared to the Tigers and stuff, they're significantly better armor wise. There's been a lot of times in War Thunder where I met one face to face, and let's just say I didn't win very much. But I've heard in real life, one of the main issues that we had with that Pershing, or the Pershing tank in general, was the engine. Basically the same line of issues that the Tigers had, especially the Tiger 2s, from what I understand. I could be totally wrong. I'm no expert. I'm just a tank nerd, at least slightly. I like tanks. I like big guns, shall we say. But I would rate it a solid. I feel like it would be a disservice to put it in below A tier. Not gonna lie, because the armor and the gun, that thing can like punch through anything. So I'm gonna rate it an A. Here we go with another American vehicle. This one's a M3 Lee. This is one of the most, I would say, one of the silliest American vehicles that we used, just because of it has multiple guns. It kind of has the idea of like a land battleship, but not quite all the way. But they seem decent, I guess. They're not too difficult to kill, it seems, at least in War Thunder. War Thunder is probably not a good comparison to real life, not gonna lie, because a lot of the vehicles, it seem to be either like nerfed or like way too good. Other than that, M3 Lee's pretty good. It kind of has the same idea of a Sherman, I guess. I don't really know much about the M3 Lee. If you guys know anything, you guys can comment that below. I would rate it I would say it's a C. I don't think it was a really overwhelming success. We have a British vehicle. Oh, that's interesting. The Churchill. I have mixed feelings about the Churchill. I feel like it was decent, but in terms of like heavy tanks of World War II, it wasn't the best because mobility isn't exactly a strong suit, shall we say. But at least in War Thunder, it seemed pretty good. I'm not so sure about how it was in real life. They very well could have had issues with the engine, like some of the other vehicles. But I'm gonna rate it I'm gonna say it's a B tier tank. Like, it wasn't terrible. I'm not too sure if it was a good vehicle, but I'm gonna say it's a B. Next, we have another British tank. Oh, this one, Firefly. It's basically just a Sherman. It's just a British version of a Sherman. Man. Because the Sherman's not very original, not gonna lie, from Britain, but you can't really blame them because didn't really have a lot of liberties with that, with design. I mean, at least they have a different style turret, but it seems like it was a good vehicle because it had a big gun on it that was able to punch through thick armored stuff. I would rate it I would say it's a C. I'm not too sure exactly how it performed in real life, but I do know that the Shermans that had the bigger guns did have better chances against the like the big cats. Oh, this one's fun. This is a IS-3 from the Soviets. They did actually make these, believe it or not. Whether or not they were used in World War II, that's a different question. But one thing I do know about is definitely towards the tail end of World War II, they seem like a really good tank. Whenever I face them in War Thunder, they're a pain. They're a pain to crack, especially frontally. There's like, well, pretty much everywhere you can't really pin it, even with like a Tiger. It's such a pain. Russian bias moments. Anyways, but I do know if you like shoot them in the hatch on the front, it somehow pins it, something like that. But There's a lot of issues with some of the Soviet tanks in War Thunder, not gonna lie, but that's probably just a skill issue on my part. I would rate it a solid, in terms of World War II, I would say it's a S tier vehicle, just because of the amount of punishment it can take and not really like show any what's the word, signs of those angles, man. They get you, that's for sure. Alright guys, that is it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified for future videos, as well as comment down below what your thoughts are on how I ranked these vehicles. And other than that, Crimsgrave VR out.